So Phanteks built a high airflow Mini-ITX case called the P200A. How is it? Well, we find out next right here on Robeytech. Welcome to our first new format full case review. If you want to understand how and what we do during these reviews in depth, you can check out our video on the whole case testing methodology right here. Now, by the end of this video, you will be able to 1. Know all of the features and an overview of the Phanteks P200A. 2. See a full build and get an understanding of what building inside of a Phanteks P200A is like. 3. See the benchmarks and thermal performance of our build inside of the P200A. And then 4. Walk away happy because you felt that quality time you spent with me helped you just with that little bit of inner peace that you've been searching for your entire life. You have to admit, 4 is probably the greatest part of this whole thing anyway. What does Phanteks say about the P200A? Well, they say the Eclipse P200A is a high airflow Mini-ITX chassis featuring the ultimate performance mesh to bring the highest cooling performance. The open exterior offers plenty of space for standard ATX power supplies, triple slot graphics cards, and plenty of 240/280 radiator options in the front and side of the chassis. The Eclipse P200A makes building a powerful yet compact ITX system a breeze. With a 30-liter volume, it combines a compact form factor with next-gen hardware requirements such as large triple-slot GPUs up to 355 millimeters long, high-wattage ATX power supply support, high-performance cooling options to keep clock speeds high and stable. So coming in at $69.99 in Newegg at the time of recording, the Phanteks P200A is a large but premium Mini-ITX case. There are actually 2 different versions of the case, the P200A DRGB model, and there's the P200A Performance model, which includes a side panel, but it's mesh instead of tempered glass, and it's all about performance without all the looky-loos. The P200A is an airflow case that uses what Phanteks calls its ultra-fine mesh. This 1mm mesh perforation, unique to Phanteks, is set to keep dust out without the need of an added dust filter, maximizing airflow pass-through because the air isn't blowing through 2 different layers. Because we know that RGB makes everything run faster, the RGB version does actually include the SK DRGB SK120 fans, and it is a nice touch in the inclusion of both an LED color button and an LED mode button that allows you to control the lighting of the entire case, both Phanteks or anything that uses a standard 5-volt addressable RGB header without using software. That's not to say you can't use standard RGB software to control the thing as well, but it's a nice touch, and there's a lot of options to choose from. Now, given this is a larger enclosure at 30 liters, that does mean there's a lot of room for both your GPU and CPU coolers, given what is normally considered a small form factor. The case supports up to 355mm long GPU cards, up to 3 slots, which means your 3090 Strix would fit in here. And you have the option of both horizontal and vertical mounting, thanks to the super cool modular system that has been built into the case. You will need to buy a riser cable if you plan on vertically mounting the GPU, but the case does come included with the mount-to-mount, that is actually a thing, the riser cable to the case. For I/O, we get 2 USB 3, a microphone headphone, a power and reset switch, along with those amazing LED controls. Now for cooling, this case actually has a bunch of different options that change based on if you either horizontally or vertically mount your GPU. The case supports up to 7 120mm fans, yes, 7 in a Mini-ITX case, or 2 140mm, or plus 5 120mm if you want to get picky. In other words, there's a lot of fans you can fit in this case. Now, you can side mount up to a 240mm radiator, or you can also either do a 240mm or 280mm radiator in the front. So let's just knock out clearances real quick. For motherboards, this supports Mini-ITX boards that are basically square at 170mm, both length and width, and it supports Mini-DTX boards of 170mm by 203mm if you want to get something a little off standard. For radiators, you can also add an additional 120mm radiator in the back if you do your GPU in a horizontal orientation. For height and width, showing you here on the side, you can get 279mm by 120mm. On that front, you can get 325mm by 140mm with a max thickness of 30mm for the radiator behind the front panel if you were to mount it up front. And that's in front of the key. You'll see the picture. It'll make more sense when I'm showing it to you. Now for your GPU, you can do a length of 355mm and a thickness of 65mm, which I thought was cool that they actually included that. Now that's with the fans installed behind the front panel and not on the inside of the case. If you want to get some airflow below and up into the GPU, which this case has an option of, you may want to stick to something closer to a 45mm like the XT3 from EVGA or an Founders Edition 3080 or lower type cards. For those of you who want to air cool this case, you do have options in both the horizontal and vertical mount positions for your GPU. With 165mm of clearance, when a GPU is horizontally mounted, this gives you lots of options for large tower CPU coolers, or if you vertically mount, you only get 72 to 92mm, obviously based on the thickness of your GPU, meaning more than likely you're going to be using something low profile. Finally, and something unique to this smallish form factor case, is the PSU, which, given Phantek's claim of making this an easy to build ITX case, not only do you get a lot of room, but also supporting standard components like the ATX power supply. Now, you aren't putting in a massive Silverstone 1200 watt behemoth in here, but you could do a 3090 build realistically with a 1000 watt EVGA G5. Now, before we get to the build, let's talk a bit about your storage options. Out of the box, you can do 4 dedicated SSD locations. Or if you need to stick to something a little bit more legacy and wanted to add some 3.5-inch physical drives and make more of a mini NAS, you could pick up some of those stackable HDD trays from Phanteks and do 4 3.5-inch HDDs and an additional 2 2.5-inch SSDs to blow people's mind with your Mini-ITX NAS build. Let's do it. Actually, never mind, let's not do it. But if you want to do it, you do have that option. So that's an overview of the case. We'd love to know if this format was helpful and if we should add anything to make it a bit clearer. Let us know all that stuff in your comments below. But for now, let's jump into the build. Okay, so guys, right here, this is the Phanteks Eclipse P200A. This is the newest case from Phanteks. And going from here, and it's got very, very Phanteksy looking, right? The version we have here is $69, which is actually pretty inexpensive, and it comes with 2 of their SK120 fans. But let's go and pop this open. So let's go and pull this, that's up. Oh, there it goes, it just pops up, so there you go. Just pop them off, there's the sides. One thing you'll notice right here on the side is that we actually have this side panel right here. The main reason being is one of the things that's super unique about this case is that you can do side-mounted exhaust. Now, we're doing all of the things on today's stream. We're going to vertically mount the GPU, we're going to side mount the radiator and stuff, so you'll see all this today, and we'll even talk about optimal airflow setup that we're going to do in this case. So yeah, that's one of the things that's already different, as you can see this right here. These cable management channels are actually metal. One of the things that's always a problem with Mini-ITX cases is trying to get things to stay down. You have SD mounts, all that sort of stuff right here, which is also modular. And I'm gonna pull the front panel off. There we go. You actually have the option of vertically mounting your GPU. And the way that works, and we're gonna set this up for vertical mounting right now, is you can just take these screws off. There we go. And then this just comes apart like that. There you go. Now you can set this for vertical mounting. So we just set this like this. Okay, so that screws in just like that, and then finally you've got one more screw right here, and then boom, you're set for vertical mounting. Let's talk about airflow in this case real quick. So looking at this, we're actually gonna be sticking a single 120 down here at the bottom. We're gonna create a slight positive pressure inside the case. So we'll have 3 intake and 2 exhaust. We're gonna be sticking a side-mounted radiator. The way that basically works is there's these little doors right here, and they shoot out like rocket ships. Boom. So you got 2 little doors right there. These are also, you also have SSD mounting mechanisms on there, but you can stick a 240mm rad here on the side. So we're gonna be doing a 240 in the front, so we'll have intake exhaust, but we'll also have intake here. And again, main reason being is with our vertically mounted GPU, that will blow the hot air up and then out via the exhaust. So should be a cool setup. Okay, so let's talk about the parts we're putting in here. We're gonna be doing a Ryzen 9 5900X. We're gonna be using the Asus ROG Strix B550i Gaming. For RAM, we're gonna be using the new Vengeance RGB Pro SL. We've got our Intel SSD. We've got a 512 gig just for the sake of doing the build to keep that thing nice and cool. We're gonna be using the Phanteks Glacier 1 240 MP. I wanted to show you guys something as an option with these, because a lot of times these come with high static pressure fans, and a lot of times high static pressure fans don't have an RGB option. So one of the things we're going to be using to kind of show you an RGB option for potentially high static pressure fans is what called the Phanteks. These are called Halos. These are called Lux Halos. These are also made by Phanteks. We're going to be using a full ATX power supply, so we're going to use an EVGA 850 G5. We're going to be using a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 Founders Edition. I have one of EVGA's special sleeve kits for Founders Editions. This build all up would be about $2,000. Okay, so we're gonna grab our motherboard out of here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our CPU in. Here we have a Ryzen 9 5900X. Okay, so there we go. We're just gonna put that to 90 degrees. Then we'll pop that in just like that. And then we just pop this down, and there it is. Okay, so let's put our RAM in. The way RAM's gonna work, unclick that. There's a little slot in the PCB right there. Just gonna pop it in just like that. But then listen to this. Oh, that was a solid click. Oh, that one was not as solid. That was not as solid, terrible click. Let's go ahead and grab our NVMe now, and that's gonna go right here. There's an M.2 here, and then there's also an M.2 on the back as well. So this actually has both two M.2 slots, which is kind of nice. We're gonna take this, just pop it in just like that. There it is, you know it's plugged in. Okay, so there we go. What we are gonna do now though is we do need to put in our bracket for our AIO. We're gonna put this in that little bag. This AIO is actually a really cool AIO. Now we're gonna go ahead and throw thermal paste on this just in preparation because again, we've used this AIO before. Okay, now let's go ahead and grab our case. What we're gonna do real quick is let's go ahead and install our 5th fan. Okay, so there we go. Now our 5th fan is in. The way our airflow is gonna work is we're gonna have intake, 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 and then we have exhaust out of the back. Okay, so let's get our AIO finished building. Okay, so we're gonna grab our halos so we can still have the high static pressure fans to blow through the radiator, but still have that RGB we really want. The question is, will this fit with this right here is the question. Nope. Okay, we're gonna move our fans to the outside to give it more room. Now our radiator's mounted. Now we can turn this over, keep this turned over, and quickly get our cables together. And all the RGB is plugged in. You guys have witnessed a miracle of epic proportions. Let's go and get our AIO mounted real quick though. But let's go ahead and put in our vertical GPU mount now. And boom, we're ready to vertically mount our GPU. Let's go ahead and do the rest of our PSU first, because I want to make sure I get all those cables managed, so then all I have to do is plug in the GPU and we're good. First, let me just, oh, I love, you know what, honestly, Yankee Candle, I feel like they're missing an opportunity right here with the PSU smell, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, smell test approved for sure. I need one SATA. There is a motherboard and then we have a CPU, and that is all we need. I am not going to do cable extensions for this. Okay, so now our PSU's installed. Looks not beautiful right now because we haven't run everything the right way. We're gonna run our cables real quick. GPU time right here, RTX 3070 ready to go. There it is right there, ready to go. There we go. Okay, now it's in. Do the rest of the cable management. Call this thing done. Okay, so let's put the back on. Okay, back is on. Okay, let's go ahead and put the front on. RGB will be controlled by the case, so we should be able to play around with the case lights here. We crammed a lot into this thing. There it is. Okay, here we go. Flipping the switch. Whoa, that is cool. Look at those lights. Okay, so you just saw a full build inside of the P200A. And now for the fun part. How is this case thermally? It sounds dirty when you say it. How is this case thermally? And how do these particular components perform in benchmark? So let's talk about case thermals. Here we are looking at thermal performance numbers for this case in the configuration of 3 intake, 2 exhaust with a slight positive pressure using Phanteks SK120 RGB fans on the default fan curve. So for our CPU thermals, we're seeing this case sitting in an idle with our 5900X sitting at a nice and frosty low 40s in both an open and closed case scenario. When we turn up the heat, literally by making the CPU do its job, we see those numbers jump up into the high 70s in an open case and to a nice and toasty 80 in our closed case scenario. Now this is still plenty of headroom for our CPU in this case, and the lack of delta between open and closed means that the case is doing a good job of managing airflow and getting to the components with the current fan configuration. Now for GPU, we had a few options and we had to test them with the case. Of course, I mean, come on, we can't be like half-butted about this. So in the numbers I'm showing you, you're gonna see both a vertical and horizontal mount configuration for the GPU for this PC. Now we did, because we aren't monsters, change the configurations of the fan to try and make it optimal for both configurations. So when in a vertical mount, you would see a 120mm fan at the bottom, and for a horizontal, we mounted 120mm in the exhaust at the back because of their super cool mounting mechanism. Now it is important to note that we could have added another 120mm in the bottom for the horizontal GPU configuration, but given that it would only work for a limited number of GPUs given those super thin certain classifications for like XC3s or Founders Editions, we wanted to make sure the thermal numbers were far more universal. So let's get into the numbers. For the GPU idle, in vertical, we saw it sitting in the mid to high 30s with a slightly higher idle temperature of the high 30s to low 40s when the GPU was in the horizontal or orientation. Now when we put the GPU pedal to the metal, the differences between these two became negligible, as in both orientations saw temperatures in the mid 70s. One interesting note though is that we did see a drop in GPU temperature in the closed case for the horizontal mounted GPU, and we ran this test multiple times just to make sure because it benefited from the focus air when the side panels were actually on, which is yay Phanteks P200. Now how does this compare, you ask? Well, for an airflow case, this is right on par with what you would expect. These are good thermals for a case, and I would dare say above average when it comes to GPU cooling. It's also good to see that the delta between the two is minimal, meaning that the case really does do a good job flowing air through the build, and depending on the components you choose, here, both fans and slimmer components, upgraded fan curve, or adding more fans, you could actually even see better results. Now for the benchmarks of this build, we chose, because if you want to build the exact same build in this PC or another case, which you wanted to do, we also ran our awesome and amazing benchmark. So let's talk about our single player RTX experiences, given this is an NVIDIA GPU paired with a Ryzen 9 5900X as a Founders Edition 3070, or any other RTX 3070 for that matter. For Tomb Raider, running at 1440p with DLSS on and highest presets, we saw an average frame rate of 121 frames per second across the runs that we did on the game. For Metro Exodus, also running at 1440p, running ray tracing on high and DLSS set to balance, we saw an average FPS across all of our runs at 78. But what about the MP games? I mean, that's what everybody really plays, right? Well, for Apex Legends running on low visual settings at 1440p optimized for competitive gameplay and high FPS, we saw an average frame rate of 143 frames per second across multiple game sessions. For Call of Duty, again set for competitive gameplay and maximizing for frame rate, we saw an average frame rate of 87 FPS. And finally, for all our Fortnite fanatics, again, 1440p, low visual settings, set for competitive, so you can pwn fools like a boss, we were sitting at a whopping 436 FPS. Easily good enough for one of those sweet 360 FPS monitors that you have out now from Razer or whomever. Now remember, if you drop down to 1080p, you will see those numbers jump up. Actually, in some cases, probably significantly. And if you jump up to 4K, those numbers will go down. But 1440p is our baseline. So there you have it, guys. You have the features, you've seen a build, you've seen the thermals and the benchmarks, but what about the building experience? Oh, kumbaya, that's my favorite. Now I remember the whole time I built in this case, I kept saying how amazing it was to work in, especially working in cases like the Tomahawk Mini-ITX. Can I get an amen right there, Josiah? You remember that. From a Razer, for as cool as they are, you definitely felt that ITX tax that comes with a small form factor build like this one. I kept waiting to hit that with this case, but honestly, I never did. From the ample amount of room to put almost everything you could want in it, including your cable management, by the way, I never felt like this case was truly limiting me to how and what I wanted to build. This case always felt premium, and unlike some cases like the Montage Sky 1, it actually felt like Phanteks cared about the building experience, or heck, had built inside of the PC themselves. Then when you add the modularity and the ability to do both vertical and GPU mounting, right, by the way, not just throw two screws in there, but actually having different cooling options as well as a really great mounting mechanism that's ideal for it, you really do have a great case for both circumstances, which our thermals showed. So let's boil it all down. The Phanteks P200A is truly a builder's dream for the Mini-ITX space of builds. But at 30 liters of space, this is anything but a true SFF build, meaning small form factor. That being said, if you are looking for a small footprint, good airflow case that is really fun to build in and gives you options for part without taking up all that room on your desk, I would say $69 USD would consider the Phanteks P200A a solid option. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'd love to know down in the comments below what you thought about this review. Did this have all the information you wanted? Please let us know all of that feedback down in the comments. Now, while you're down there, make sure you slap that subscribe button with that like button and ring that notification bell so you get a notification each and every time we go live or post a new video right here on Robeytech. Now, speaking of live, we have a live show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, both on Twitch and right here on YouTube. If you want to talk about our community, maybe get some more data, you can hang out with us over at discord.gg/Robeytech. We love to talk about all of these sort of things, and we have some great resources for you to help you with your next build. And then finally, follow us on all the socials. We have fun times on TikTok, we have fun times on YouTube Shorts. Anyway, guys, we hope you really enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.